O'clock, a little past that, so we will call this meeting to order.
Okie doke. Member Bierce?
Present.
Member Larson?
Here.
Member Lieberman?
Here.
Member Melgen is absent. Member Rose Shears? Here. Member Hale McClanahan? Here. And Chair Hodges.
Here. All right, well, we will start with the land acknowledgement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lijon. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. All right. With that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes.
Are there any questions on the minutes?
I'll just repeat my previous comments that Ava does AI-based minutes in addition to the official minutes. For those who want more detail, it's not official, but it's more unofficial, more detailed summary. It could be useful for folks who want a little bit more than what's on the current minutes. So just could be worth thinking about for future agendas.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Member Bierce?
Yes.
Member Larson?
Yes.
Member Lieberman?
Yes.
Member Rose Shears? Yes. Member Hale McClanahan?
Yes.
Chair Hodges.
Yes. Okay. We will next move on to public comment for items not on the agenda.
Nick Peterson, your time starts now.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nick Peterson with the Albany Climate Action Coalition. Just very happy to see the committee meeting. These are very critical given the state of world affairs and addressing climate change no longer being a priority of our federal government. So again, I want to encourage you guys to really think largely about how we can address this as rapidly as possible. I look forward to see what the subcommittee with the city council comes up with as far as how the process of bringing about climate action in the city of Albany can be more efficient and more effective. One thing I did want to bring up again is the idea that you can't pursue certain things is sort of contrary to what the point of the whole committee is, which is you should be free to discuss and bring forward all innovative ideas that you think need to be heard by the city council that will be effective in addressing this climate emergency. So I really encourage you to do that and to think broadly and creatively about how policies and other city actions can help move our whole community along towards reaching our goal, which at this point is probably not in keeping with what the science says and is still 20 years off, but is still a daunting task to do. And we really need to be moving along quickly, implementing concepts that may take 2 to 5 years to really reach full fruition. So go team. Thank you very much.
Lucinda Young, your time starts now.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I don't see a timer. That's why I'm just asking. But this is Lucinda Young. I'm a member of the Albany Climate Action Coalition. Now I see a timer. Thank you. I had a couple of comments. The East Bay Green Home Tour was Saturday before last. My house was on it, and I just wanted to give a report. It was really encouraging. We had 110 people come through the house, which was more than double last year. And a lot of them were Albany residents. I'm not sure how we explain the increased interest. But there was a lot of increased interest, and I've been involved in the Green Home Tour now. This is the fourth year. The first 2 years was volunteers at others' homes, and then the last 2 years I've um, opened my home. I've hosted a tour at my house. And I've seen a shift. There's a lot, I can remember 4 years ago, a lot of people had never heard of induction cooking, and almost everybody that's coming through knows something about induction cooking now. So, it's just encouraging to see a shift. I was really surprised, especially with the lapse of most of the incentives, with the federal tax credits gone, with the tech clean rebates no longer. I was really expecting a small showing, so it was really encouraging to see so many people. Um, Other thing I just want to mention, we've had some discussion in here about the food ordinance, which I think is great. I was really encouraged by one restaurant on Solano Avenue that I go to, I don't know, maybe once a quarter, and they've had the, ubiquitous plastic containers for a long time. And even before the ordinance went into effect, I would talk to them about it and they would kind of smile. Anyway, they are now have sustainable takeout foodware. Phenomenal after all these years. So, and I did compliment them, thank them a lot. But there's still quite a few places that are not in compliance. I just noticed the yogurt store on Solano Avenue, such an easy swap to swap the plastic takeout or the plastic cutlery with wooden or bamboo cutlery, and yet, the plastic spoons continue to be used, useful life of, 5 minutes. And so I think there's still a lot of work to do around increasing compliance. And although we're small, I think it's really important that we think about the impact, that not just the impact within our community, but that we are setting an example, a model for other communities. And keep that in mind for all of our work today. Thank you.
That's all the public comment we have.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll move on to our presentation, item 4-1. We'll invite our presenters up.
Okay. Good evening, Albany Climate Action Committee. I'm here. My name is David Lamb. I'm an associate engineer with the Public Works Department here with the City of Albany. And tonight we have sort of a double header presentation. I'll start off talking about the status of the implementation of green infrastructure inside the City of Albany and its history, and talk about our maintenance needs. And then we have a guest speaker, Ethan Rayner from the Watershed Project, with whom we are working on a future collaboration as part of our efforts to upgrade and standardize our maintenance practices within the city public works. Next slide, please. So our purpose here tonight is just to provide an informative presentation going through the background of green infrastructure and the existing efforts. Next slide. So a natural place to start is talking about what green infrastructure is. And to help illustrate that point, I've put together side by side two photographs. You can see on the left, we're showing the same view in the city on Marin Avenue, but in two different time frames. One is from 1912, from the earliest days of development of the city. And you can compare that with a somewhat current view taken from Google Street View in 2025, showing just how the city has developed over the 100+ years. On the left side, you can see just a single house structure with roof. The street is unpaved, a lot of open, grassy area. Compared with the right side, where we have a full street, curb to curb, a lot more houses that are obscured by some of the tree and foliage, and just much more dense and impervious surface built up in the city in that last 100 years. Next slide, please. And so what happens is when you're developing in any area, you take an area that has a lot of capacity for infiltration of stormwater during rain events. And as it goes through this progression of development, you introduce a lot more impervious surfaces, surfaces where rainwater will hit it and it'll just pool right off and find its way into the nearest drain or waterway with much less capacity for the infiltration. So you'll generate much more intense flows in much shorter periods of time. And what green infrastructure is, the concept is that it's to help restore some of the features of a more natural pre-development runoff. So it'll slow that intensity period. It'll help reduce the transport of pollutants that are generated from an urban environment. For example, if you have a roadway, you have cars that may drip oils or other fluids. You can have deposited particulates from brake dust, et cetera. And this will get transported into the storm drain system and discharged into creeks in the bay. So putting green infrastructure in place helps to mitigate that effect. And it gives an avenue, some green infrastructure, to allow for recharge of the groundwater system. Next slide, please. So what is green infrastructure? I've got some examples here. Could you go forward a slide? I wonder if it's missing some photos. Yeah, we'll just throw them all up there. So in the top row, we have 3 photographs showing examples of bioretention basins, pervious concrete pavers in a parking lane, and bioswales that help infiltrate some water as it's flowing towards an inlet. These are 3 examples that already exist in Albany that we've implemented. And then the bottom 3, if you could go forward one slide, are other examples found elsewhere. There are examples of detention basins that provide additional capacity to capture and hold rainwater to slow the flow of that water into the drain. There are systems that capture stormwater for potential future reuse. And another example is green roofs, where you have similar vegetation or grassy areas that help absorb or infiltrate that water and use it towards naturally growing vegetation so that it's not just running off. And this can make use of roof space that would generally be used up just sheeting that water off. Next slide, please. So here are some just general benefits of green infrastructure, or GI. This is taken from EPA. I know Ethan prepared some slides that address some more detail about specific benefits too. So I'll just go over high level. We talked about improving water quality and reducing the risk of overall flooding. Some other ones that may be less apparent are reducing urban heat island effect, providing shade in an urban area, improving air quality with the increased vegetation in urban space, and providing some habitat potentially for pollinators with native species. There's some social benefits with having a focal point for the community to gather or engage and just have a presence. And there are some economic benefits for providing more local jobs, or reducing that risk of flooding will also help reduce the costs associated with rebuilding or damage from floods. Next slide, please. So,
sorry, what does MRP mean?
Sure, MRP is, the acronym stands for Municipal Regional Permit. So, but generally speaking, it talks about the regional stormwater general permit that affects many of the cities in the San Francisco Bay Area. So for green infrastructure implementation in Albany, looking at the framework in which it's structured, we go back to some of the regulation that's built up over time. The first data there, 2015, talks about MRP, the second iteration of the stormwater permit. Really, we go back to 2009, which is the first iteration, which the Water Board, which is the regulatory agency that protects water quality in the Bay Area, issues this stormwater permit that affects, again, many of the municipalities. And even from that early time in 2009, they've recognized the benefits that we just talked about implementing green infrastructure. But it wasn't really until the second iteration was adopted in 2015 that it took off, and they adopted language in that second version of the permit requiring cities to start thinking about how they were going to implement green infrastructure within their cities and making that a formal requirement. So part of what they required was for cities to put together a framework for how they're going to identify opportunities to install green infrastructure and to help prioritize how those priorities will get implemented. And that then evolves into a plan that they required to be adopted by 2019 that very specifically requires cities to submit for approval by the Water Board. That lays out details about how that implementation would take place, talks about timelines, requires cities to think about how they're going to fund the implementation of green infrastructure. Next slide. So this is an excerpt of a table from Albany's 2019 Green Infrastructure Plan, and it lists out projects that are identified for the 2020 time horizon. So the Green Infrastructure Plan had multiple time horizons between short, medium, and long-term implementations. So in the short term, I think the takeaway from this table is that many of the opportunities that were identified as part of that plan that were located in the right-of-way, what our potential public projects are or were, they have been implemented in that time. Next slide, please. And here we're showing a timeline going back to 2012 of identifying 8 different projects that the city has participated in that we have already implemented in the city. And there's actually a 9th project that was even earlier than this timeline shows that I didn't include in this as a bit of an oversight, but it was an earlier project for another bioretention basin located at Cornices Creek and 6th Street. It was a collaborative project between Albany, the city of Berkeley, and the UC on their land. But what I want to highlight here is if you look at the dates that are shown in this timeline, those are the dates that these projects were constructed. And you compare that to the information from the other slide about how this regulatory framework was set up, that it was really just taking off in 2015. Well, the city had already elected to put in these green infrastructure projects because they recognized the benefit that they would contribute to the community. Next slide, please, Michelle. So briefly talking about, highlighting some key projects from the later timelines, 2030 and 2040 time horizons. The plan identifies the San Pablo Complete Streets project as a potential to have some kind of green infrastructure implemented. There is some potential space around the Ohlone Greenway, specifically the Dartmouth and the Portland intersections where we don't currently have GI, where there may be some space. And also the 600 and 700 blocks of Key Route Boulevard where we have the wider median that's currently a green space and lawn. That could be a potential space for green infrastructure. So as opportunities come up and we have these projects come through, we are looking at the appropriate space and the different use of that space from the different priorities that are trying to compete for that space. And we're trying to get green infrastructure adapted to fit in a way that makes sense. But we're not just limited to what we've identified in the Green Infrastructure Plan. One of the things that we're doing is, as other projects come up as part of our CIP capital improvements, we do try to assess whether we can adapt green infrastructure to add that to the project if it makes sense. So one opportunity that came up was a potential pedestrian safety improvement located at Santa Fe Avenue and Key Route Boulevard, where we're trying to shorten the crossing distances to make for safer crossings. And when we do that, we actually
Is that Key Route and where?
And Santa Fe,
Okay.
on the south side of the city, near the city border with Berkeley. And so when we shorten these crossings, we end up generating some space, and rather than fill it with some concrete, we're looking at whether some kind of rain garden or bioretention would be appropriate to use that space to try to accomplish multiple goals and benefits. Next slide, please. So I added a map showing the different locations where GI is already implemented, and I'll just quickly run through them. Next slide. The first implemented or constructed in 2012 as part of repaving of Pierce Street, we added pervious concrete in the parking strip, and that helps to infiltrate some of the flow that's running along from the impervious roadway. Next slide. Also in 2012, this is the Marin Avenue and Santa Fe Rain Garden. We installed these bulb outs to shorten crossings as part of Safe Streets. And this is one example where we implemented a green space, a rain garden, to help infiltrate some of the local drainage. Next slide. We have the Buchanan Bikeway. When we when we installed that in front of USDA, we had some additional public space between the Bikeway and Buchanan Street. This is near the intersection with Pierce Street. So we installed a bioswale there to help infiltrate some additional water before the runoff reaches that storm drain inlet. Next slide. Jumping ahead to 2017, this is part of a collaborative project with the school district where we installed a rain garden in Albany Middle School, and that receives runoff drainage from Brighton Avenue, and it infiltrates in the rain garden on Albany Middle School premises. Next slide. This is the Public Works Building, the construction of which finished in 2017. And there we incorporated 2 bioretention basins that takes drainage from the impervious parking lot and outdoor storage areas. Next slide. The Washington Avenue and Ohlone Greenway, we have a bioretention taking flow from that short block of Washington Avenue between the Greenway and I believe it's Spokane. This is the Marin Avenue and Key Route Boulevard. So when we repaved Marin, we installed a bioretention basin, and this basin takes flow from the block of Key Route, I guess the western half of the block, from Marin Avenue all the way up to Solano. So it's a very long drainage area that goes into this basin. And it also takes some flow from Marin Avenue through curb openings that flow directly in from the side. Next slide. And finally, we have Codornices Creek and 8th Street. And there's a pair of bioretention basins taking flow from the street at 8th Street and a portion of the parking area on UC. So that just helps to illustrate some of the projects that we already have implemented over the years. So now I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about maintenance. So we've installed all of these great projects, but over time, they'll age, the plants will get older, they'll dry, they'll die off, even with the best of maintenance. So we have to find a way to systematically manage and maintain so that these green infrastructures that we spend a lot of time investing in, time, money, resources, investing in, can operate at their best. So the city does have an asset management plan. Next slide. And it follows a very general practice of identifying what assets that we have in the city, doing some inspections so we can keep abreast of how the condition is, how they're functioning, how they're operating. We can assess based off of those observations that we've made in those inspections, put that together into a plan, and then implement appropriate measures based on what we're seeing. So that's generally what we talk about in an asset management plan to help categorize those assets and apply the appropriate maintenance treatments to them. Next slide. So this is just a sample checklist of what we use when we conduct those inspections. And I want to highlight here, next slide, just the general categories. We have.
Question, is this checklist available on the city website anywhere?
No, this is a checklist that's used just as part of the standard public works operating procedures. I'm happy to share a copy. It's if you're interested. And it's also part of the presentation slides if you want to reference it too. Next slide, please, Michelle. So I did want to help categorize how we break down what we're looking at in our inspections. So I circled here in green, trash and debris accumulation, vegetation, and mulch. And those are items that we see something wrong with or that needs corrective action, then those can be packaged as part of more routine maintenance that can be potentially high touch, but can happen in a more a shorter interval frequency. Next slide. Whereas by comparison, issues having to do with standing water or sediment or erosion can signal a need for more intensive maintenance practices. And of course, if there's an issue with the structural soundness, then that would be a more intensive repair. Next slide. So we're always trying to balance the needs of routine maintenance, things that we can do on a shorter interval frequency versus things that require a little bit more planning, that take a little bit more time, more effort, more resources to do. Next slide. We can keep going. So tying this back to what I was talking about with the timeline that these green infrastructure projects were constructed, I added a little bit of color coding on the bottom. On the left side of the timeline, in the red category, those are projects that were implemented over a decade ago. And they're definitely showing their age. So these projects tend to require a little bit more intensive, more planning forward, more long-term maintenance, while also keeping in mind that we have projects that are aging that will also rapidly approach that category. And we don't want to forget about those, and we want to fold those into our long-term maintenance plans. And at the same time, we have projects across the entire timeline spectrum where we need to conduct our routine maintenance as well. Next slide. You can keep going. So that was just showing that we're here at we've done our inspections, we've done our assessments, and we're trying to plan how we're going to systematically approach the maintenance that we need, both routine and long-term. So this is where we are working on a collaboration with the Watershed Project and Ethan and his group to look at how we can help systematically approach our GI maintenance requirements. So they have really great experience working with other cities and can lend their expertise to the City of Albany in both routine and long-term style maintenance. So next slide. One thing that we're really working on looking forward is to address some of the long-term maintenance needs. We want to start organizing a community-oriented event that people can get involved in and help improve these great resources in their communities. So the first event that we're planning on is we're tentatively scheduled for this fall, before or right at the beginning of the rainy season. And we're looking to help refresh the basin at Santa Fe and Marin. So again, this is the picture of the basin. You can see over time, this was planted 12, 13 years ago. A lot of the original native plants have gone away. It's been taken over by grass. What we'd like to do is remove some of the non-native plants and refresh it back to closer to its original state, and a refresh of the soil infiltrative media so that we can retain that infiltrative capacity and restore the mulch. And we think this is a great opportunity for the community to get involved and get their hands dirty, so to speak, in doing some of the soil and mulch additions and planting even. So we're really excited to try to kick off something like this, and hoping for a successful project where we can also expand this to some of the other GI that we have installed that are also aging and need of this larger refresh. Next slide. And so looking ahead, in trying to implement this GI maintenance, we want to continue to implement the remaining projects that we already have identified in our GI plan. We want to continue to look for opportunities to add projects to that GI plan, and continue to maintain our GI in compliance with our permit requirements. And immediately coming up next, we're already underway on a design for that bioretention at the intersection of Santa Fe and Key Route. We are looking to kickstart this project, this collaborative project with the Watershed Project to help with the long-term and the routine maintenance, where we have, we do some more of the routine litter collection, vegetation trimming, and mulching under the expertise and guidance of the Watershed Project to make sure that these, some of our less old GI can still maintain a lot of their capacity and capabilities. Next slide. So here I'll introduce Ethan and invite him to come up here. He's prepared a couple of slides too to talk a little bit about their background and some of the great work that they've done in the past, and I think some general benefits of GI as well. I think we'll just continue right through with Ethan's presentation and then take questions afterwards. That's all right with you? All right.
Sorry, I'm just having some trouble with this PowerPoint. Let's see if I can.
Good evening, everyone. So while we're getting that set up, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Ethan Rayner. I work with the Watershed Project. We are a local environmental nonprofit based out of Richmond, California. And this year, actually, we are celebrating our 30th anniversary. So we've been around for quite some time. The first couple slides kind of talk about our background, but I can dive right into that. Education is the through line of our work, environmental education. We've worked with the City of Albany before, every coastal cleanup day over at the Albany Bulb, always very successful and a great event. So we do trash collection, all sorts of things, educational events. My own department is greening urban watersheds, so that's kind of the bread and butter of our work here, and also why I'm here to present to you today. I could also just talk off the cuff if that would be useful.
Sorry, I've almost got it. Just a second.
Did you say you're based out of Richmond?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So you cover the cities in Contra Costa and Northern Alameda?
Exactly, Contra Costa and Alameda County. And a lot of our work also, we work with Oakland and San Francisco Public Unified School Districts as well. So, but most of our projects are in Contra Costa and Alameda. Yeah. Oh, excellent. Thank you. So that's us. Kind of already mentioned it already. I do want to highlight one element as well of our workforce development programs, where we do youth internships and youth apprenticeships for Contra Costa and Alameda County youth. And that kind of, they have specific pathways for employment and interest as well. So mine is greening our urban watersheds. So next slide, please. Great. So how do we restore nature's role in our cities, right? Everything is very paved. So how do we bring that in? So that kind of encapsulates water quality, supporting biodiversity, native and ecological health as well. And so we do quite a lot, including riparian creek restoration, bioswales, rain gardens, you name it, we're kind of there. This is one of our restoration sites in Contra Costa County, over in like the Rollingwood community, kind of by Hilltop Mall. Really interesting urban creek zone there, but we won't talk about that just yet. I also want to mention urban forestry as well. Trees are a key component of this project as well. So next slide, please. So, and apologies, this slide deck is from a previous presentation I gave for a conference. So a lot of this may be remedial, but I think it is essential to break down like just the basic concepts. I know David already mentioned a lot of that. But so why do we need green infrastructure? We can see Albany from this satellite map, but the entire built environment in San Francisco intentionally was paved. Pervious, impervious surfaces was used earlier. Pervious means water can get through or other things can get through. Impervious means it cannot. And so where that water has to go somewhere. Next slide, please. So here we see in Wildcat Creek over in Tilden Regional Park, the effects of flooding. This was the one without water. I'm not going to do left and right on my mirrored screen here, but is from December 6th, I believe. The one where it's flooding is December 16th after a massive rain event. So this is higher up in the watershed. Specifically in the upper watershed, where there's a lot of other elements where it's pervious and permeable as well. Next slide, please. In the lower watershed, the impacts of that as just hydrology works, neighborhoods can flood, especially ones where there is no green infrastructure in place. Next slide, please, as well. And so the downstream and more bayside communities are directly impacted by flooding. You can see people have to live through this. You can see that deep puddle is, while it's not a catastrophic flood, it certainly impacts people's lives. And this is in one of our projects where it just does this every year, every 2 years on the regular. And so how do we adapt to this? Next slide, please. So sponge cities. Kind of a basic concept, but something we like to use in our work, especially around environmental education, is using in GSI is green stormwater infrastructure, using that as a solution to flooding and then also habitat loss. So next slide, please. Awesome. So we already kind of mentioned other forms of GI, but bioswales, we really like that term. Sometimes they can be termed like bioretention areas or other terms, but we really like to emphasize the bio of it, bringing in plants as well to help be a natural solution to flooding. So slowing, spreading, and sinking stormwater over the time. You can see a bunch of pictures off to the far side of the screen as well that David mentioned. The landscape previously was all oak trees and open savanna and all sorts of great stuff. Now it's, or in the past 50 years, it became a gray funnel where water just flows from our streets, which carries all sorts of pollutants, like microplastics, all sorts of crap. It goes into our storm drains and then directly into the bay. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of that at one of our main bioswales in the city of Richmond. You can just see the sheen of just particulate matter and diesel fuel that's flowing into one of our bioswales. Next slide, please. And so not only does it improve environmental and like social health, but it also removes a lot of the pollutants and heavy metals and diesel fuel from the environment as well. You can see on the bottom corner, the inflow of a curb cut, the water from an adjacent parking lot flows in, carrying all of those pollutants. And then we measure it as part of our scientific monitoring system as well, measure the inflow and then the outflow as well when it flows into the adjacent Baxter Creek. And so you can see across the board, there's a marked decrease in all sorts of pollutants. The only one that stands out is copper, because there are some thoughts that perhaps recycled wood or treated wood products for tree stakes can release copper into the environment as well. But across the board, with the exception of copper, it is a marked decrease between almost, 80 to 100% decrease across the board. And so, next slide, please. That is kind of the beauty of the bioswale. The bioswale captures all of that, uses its roots and the mycorrhizal fungi network that is underground to sequester that and eventually break it down over a longer duration time scale. So we're looking at a case study here of the Baxter Creek or Booker T. Anderson bioswale. This began in 2018, so along the same timetable that David mentioned for some of your guys' older projects. And so we turned a relatively large, like 6,000 plus square foot parking lot, median into a bioswale and swale. So as I mentioned earlier, the runoff from this parking lot and adjacent street would just flow directly into Baxter Creek, including all of that oil, heavy metals, et cetera. And now the bioswale acts as a natural filter to capture that and filter it out before it hits the bay. Next slide, please. And so here's a conceptual design of the area. You can see the adjacent creek zone and the way the water flows as well into that bioswale. It's all natural. One thing I like to say about bioswale, especially for depending on the audience that I'm speaking to as well, is how effective it is over time. It can last quite some time, decades even, depending on the carrying capacity and the capacity of the soil. There are no filters, there's no energy that goes into it. It's all like energy neutral as well. Sometimes the plants may need to be replaced, and we'll kind of cover that in a second. But I do want to emphasize that this is a green solution that does not require energy, does not require tech, does not require filters. It's just plants and soil medium and all of that. Next slide, please. So here's some pictures of construction. I don't think we need to dwell too much on this. This is relatively standard, but you can see it being constructed. The bioswale key components is the layers of soil, soil types. In the bottom corner, you can also see gravel as well, helps to filter out things as it settles and percolates through the system. Next slide, please. So now we're kind of getting into the maintenance challenges, and we can also see the standard design for bioswales that came about in the 20-teens through early 2020s. The picture on my left, oh, it is the left, good. So you can see that's mostly gray rush, which is a great plant. It's a California native plant. Juncus patens, really excellent. It does great there. However, that is kind of the main plant that is used in this swale. You can kind of see that across the board in projects in the City of El Cerrito on San Pablo Avenue, even here in Albany. It's not a bad plant, it just is one plant of many, many different types that provides one benefit. You can see it's doing its job very well. During the first year or so, the first heavy rain, it's retaining that water, and eventually, slowly, it's gonna percolate down. Next slide, please. So then, this is the site in 2023 when I first came on board. The Juncus, the gray rush has grown much wider, but we ran into a significant maintenance challenge. So how was the City of Richmond equipped to deal with that? How were other partners equipped to deal with that? The limited plant palette was certainly a compelling factor in this. It did not include other diverse palettes of spreading plants other than Juncus patens. And you can see there that it's hardy, but it's just being mowed down. Again, city maintenance staff were not properly trained and had to bear the brunt of maintenance across the board. So it's kind of that approach that is relatively common, mow, blow, and go, and just like that approach to it, which is problematic for having beautiful landscaping, but it's what you got to do when you have limited capacity. And then additionally, due to the pandemic in 2020, our team had limited capacity as well to support maintenance. And so the city had to do it all on their own, essentially. And then finally, just guesswork watering schedule. How much is enough? Do bioswales or green stormwater infrastructure need irrigation? The answer is yes. Most plants need a minimum of 2 years of establishment of watering monthly or even more so if it's very dry. And they still look better after like regular maintenance, even if there's maintenance and irrigation, even if they're established. So next slide, please. And so here are some results, and the next slide kind of emphasizes this as well. So after it's mowed, it's green and weedy in winter, it's empty by late summer, there's significant attrition of other shrubs that are in place, and then there's not really any significant blooming season, only early spring when all the other weeds pop up. Next slide, please. And so this kind of shows the contrast. It's mowed in late spring or early summer, and then it's empty and weedy by late summer through fall. You can see the direct contrast, like at our gray overcast days these summers we're having. It's a direct correlation of just like the invasive like cord grasses, and Bermuda grass just comes in place of that. And I also want to add, I don't believe I mentioned that at the last slide, but this space, when it's open, kind of ugly looking, is a space for illegal dumping as well. It's easy to just like dump a mattress in there and leave it. So how do we change that? Next slide, please. I guess we're not there yet. So the attrition, kind of the same story. A lot of these things have suffered other than the gray rush. There was 60 gray rush installed, 40 were left. There was significant attrition on a lot of other native shrubs, including pink flowering currants, coyote brush, coffeeberry, etc. And so that led it to that kind of ugly looking, just hay-ish, weedy look. So next slide, please. All right, so now we're talking about how our role has evolved since 2023. So we took over site management of this site through an agreement with the city. The City of Richmond has a really excellent Adopt a Spot program, and they also support community groups and even individuals by having Love Your Block events that have targeted micro grants for community organizations like ours, or even residents and community partners, or just even like neighbors who want to adopt a spot. And so what we did there was expand upon the plant palette. I have many slides coming up about the plant palette. And so specifically using native plants that were adapted to this space to fill it out. Then selective hand weeding to create a buffer around these areas and these desired plant species. Line trimming in moderation before seeds went to seed. And then also like using pulses of work, having larger volunteer work days, community events as a way to educate community groups and individuals on the importance of spaces like these, and also smaller targeted events with our team or youth interns, really experienced folks who really get the fine-tooth weeding there. Next slide, please. And so our current revitalized plant list includes entirely native plants. There are still a few non-native introduced Mediterranean plants in the bioswale that we have not taken out because they've done okay. But our emphasis is native plants, and specifically ones that do the following: flower and produce seeds readily throughout the year specifically. So you can see it throughout the year. It provides habitat as well. They're fast spreading. They can produce via rhizomes or seeds. They can have a combination of both being drought tolerant and moisture tolerant as well, which is essential in these spaces because it's usually dry throughout the rest of the year, and then they get flooded during the rainy season. And then just a diverse mix of shrubs and other plants, herbs, grasses, forbs, a bunch of stuff in there. Next slide, please.
Sorry, what's a forb?
A forb is kind of like an herbaceous herb, essentially. So in this example, mugwort is a good one. I think mints, something that's non-woody, but like more like, I'm thinking cat mint or mints specifically. Those are good examples. But yeah, I definitely can provide an updated list as well. Could talk about plants all day. And so water tolerant and also long flowering. We kind of talked about the social, environmental, economic reasons for bioswales. So, but also like if plants are flowering year round, the community gets drawn in as well. It's not just something that blooms like once and it's done. It's something that can provide community interest, but then also provide habitat as well. People like to see hummingbirds, and we've seen all sorts of, we've seen garter snakes and salamanders in our bioswale as well. So here's just a couple examples. Next slide, please. Drought-tolerant flowers as well, also essential. California fuchsia is used extensively in these sites. You may see it. It blooms from now through the end of the year. It's quite stunning. Hummingbirds love it as well. But also yarrow and Pacific aster, Yarrow smells excellent, a great addition to any habitat garden. Next slide, please. And also incorporating shade-tolerant things, both flowers and grasses, and some nice shrubs in there as well. Iris is a great example, alum root, California fescue. Next slide, please. I told you guys I had a lot of plant slides, but also including riparian plants as well. Gray rush certainly has a place in here, but it should not be the only plant used in biosoils. It shouldn't be the plant that's 80% of this plant in biosoils. It should be 5%, 10%, something. It's very hardy, so if we have issues of access or people doing dumping or cutting through the area to get to a different path, that can be used in its place. But there's also other rushes and sedges as well, of which many are highly locally native to the East Bay Hills and California natives as well. Next slide, please. And then, of course, shrubs. We mentioned coffeeberry, coyote brush, and pink flowering currant. All excellent examples create habitat and nesting habitat for birds and songbirds, as well as pollinator habitat as well. Next slide, please. Great. So this is the same site today compared to what it was. You can see how it's spaced out with the application of mulch. There's poppies blooming in the front right by that bioswale sign, as well as some variegated maples, so to adding a little bit of a diversity of height and also tree and shrub diversity. So this is what it looks like today. It's much improved towards what it was. There's still a place for rush in here, but also a place for a diversity of other species as well. Next slide, please. So now to lessons learned and takeaways. So bioswales and other GI help create sponge cities that lessen flooding, but they can also protect creeks and benefit the local habitat as well. It's not one or the other. If you build it and install a diversity of plant species, you can certainly have both, the best of both worlds. And especially flowering plants, you let that fill in and you have benefits over time. Mulch also makes maintenance easier. We can certainly talk about mulch all day. Sometimes it can clog bioswale features, but it is essential to limit weed spread. And then hand weeding instead of the mow, blow, and go approach is also vital, especially in the first few years before our shrubs and other plants get to a reasonable size. I'm not sure what that last item is. Let me see if I have something in my notes.
It's about summer irrigation.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And summer irrigation is key as well. And so it's quite key, even during the post-establishment phase after 2 or 3 years. Next slide, please. Great. And I believe that's it. My email is down there as well. Here's our newsletter if anyone's interested. Shameless plug there. But yeah, I think we'll take some questions now.
I have 2 questions. First of all, great presentation, super informative. Thank you very much. How much did that sign by the bioswale cost, and what is the cost per square foot of installed bioswale, like for plants and mulch and stuff?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know a direct answer to either of those questions. It's less than it would be. So for the sign, at least, my colleague is the one who orders the signs. I'm mostly just the plant guy. But I believe we gave David some quotes about other signs we've done throughout our many projects. I'm not quite sure the price there. And your other question was price per square foot?
Yeah, like if you want, how much does it cost to do one? Is it based on size, like it's a variety of shrubs, trees or not, or like how that gets calculated?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure we've ever done a cost analysis on per square foot. It's a relatively large site for the area. I'm not sure we have a cost for that, but certainly a cost is also like the advanced maintenance in the first phases. The short-term costs, though, do enable the site to be more maintained over the long term. So I would say that costs can certainly be nothing crazy. I mean, plants cost from our local nurseries of Watershed Nursery or Oaktown, any local ones nearby, native here as well. I think they can cost between $6 and $12 for small size pots, maybe 1 gallon. And then the larger you get for more established shrubs, then it can be like $30. And then of course, like labor time is not crazy expensive. And then the soil medium probably is the most expensive, as well as removing the excess soil as you dig down to excavate. And the dumping costs can be probably the most expensive line item. David, I'm not sure if you have any insights into that.
Yeah, you can imagine it. It does vary quite a bit depending on what your scope is, how dense the plants are, whether there's structural components to it, like engineered overflows and much more concrete involved in bioretention basins. I did look at as a couple of frames of references for our recent projects for bioretention on the Marin and Key Route bioretention. That came in around 25 to 30,000 just for construction, and that doesn't include all the time and soft costs involved in design. And that can range in comparison with, for the Washington project, I think it was around 100,000 plus, but around that ballpark for quite a bit of a larger space and a little bit more intricate work with the overflow pipe and inlet and the boulders, the decorative boulders around.
Did you have more questions?
For it, yeah.
A couple of questions about the hard infrastructure under the green infrastructure. So Marin and Key Route, that's a great example. So to what extent, because I'm very familiar, I have a background in gardening and farming and school gardens and all this good stuff, so I know this part and I don't know this part, and I think that this part, the hard infrastructure, is probably going to be the most cost prohibitive thing, potentially. And so I guess I'm wondering, to what extent, I have a lot of questions about this. What's under the Marin and Key Route catchment there?
Yeah, so it is an engineered bioretention basin with different individual cells. So it's essentially like you can imagine like a bathtub of concrete with the soil media. But there is an underdrain along the bottom that collects water as it is completing its journey, percolating through the different layers of soil that Ethan helped to illustrate as part of his presentation. Once it gets filtered, going through all those different layers of soil, it collects in that underdrain, and is the clean water then is discharged into the system. So there are a number of different soil layers that is contained within that concrete cell.
Okay, cool. And then how does that, because I was looking at the map, that was such a cool cross-section, and in that particular cross-section there was like a big basin full of mulch, which will of course change over time. What does that look like? We've got different layers of soil. What does maintenance look like on that?
Sure. So I think over time, like anything as it ages over time, the composition of that mulch it evolves in the sense that sometimes pathways get plugged, or the mulch, Ethan mentioned that there was a lot of biotic action that gets taken from the organisms that live within the mulch. So over time, as that ages, they also become less and less effective, potentially. And so as we're doing monitoring, we can see that the effectiveness is waning. Then one course of action would be to just remove those layers and put in fresh layers of that infiltrated media, soil, and mulch on top.
Thank you. And then I hadn't been aware of that pervious concrete on Pierce, so that was really cool. Do you know, they're about to tear up Masonic, and then there'll be some reworking of Solano coming up. Do you know if there'll be any pervious parking strips on those projects?
So those, the design for those haven't been finalized. It's still really in conceptual planning. So that's part of the evaluation that we're doing when we're looking at what types of green infrastructure could potentially be appropriate for these locations. Again, these different green infrastructure examples will require different amounts of space, different amounts of conflicts that come up with existing utilities or the need to have certain widths for emergency vehicle access and things like that. So we're trying to see what might be appropriate to try to get green infrastructure involved as part of that project.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I think specifically I was wondering, right now they're about to start a big project on Masonic. So and it's to be done in February of next year.
Mm-hmm.
They're like tearing up, I don't know what they're doing. I think they're tearing up the EB mud, maybe.
Okay. Aware of any work on?
Oh, did I get Masonic and Brighton confused again? I'm sorry. Yeah, Brighton. Thank you. Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
Pervious parking on Brighton.
We don't have that as part of the project. So we are doing a sewer replacement project for Brighton. We're realigning a lot of the sewer mains. As part of that project, we're also coordinating with the East Bay Mud for a water line main replacement that we're coordinating schedules on. I think the sewer project is currently scheduled to go first, and then East Bay Mud will come through on their portion that is outside of the same alignment of the sewer, but within the same street. So there really isn't a lot of space, and because it's a sewer project, it's not really, once we finish with the underground utilities, I think that's the appropriate time to look at what potential green infrastructure would potentially be implemented as part of a more surface level street project with the finished paving. But since this sewer project is really focused on the underground utilities, that's not included in that project at this time.
Okay, so like thank you, that's helpful. So like when the underground utilities are complete, the street will be patched or totally repaved?
So currently, the street is going to be patched along the alignment for the sewer because, again, we have another agency coming in that's going to be essentially tearing out another portion of the street along the alignment of the water line. Yeah. And so once both of those projects are complete, we're going to look at the appropriate way to patch the street so that we get the entire street repaired better than its current condition after all of the work and construction does its wear on the street.
Okay, cool, thank you.
This is for both David and Mark. Curious about how you think about selecting locations for green infrastructure. So I know some community members have proposed stuff near intersections, like around the no parking zones. And on Marin, there are all these like bollards with light colored paint, but that doesn't get you the benefits of the stormwater runoff prevention. It still creates runoff, and it's still, they're getting heavy metals in the creek and stuff in those areas. So if you could speak to more of how you pick locations.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about the factors that we consider when we look at whether a site's appropriate for green infrastructure. One of the major ones that I talked about was the presence of utilities. In addition to underground storm drain systems, the city-owned sewer systems, we do have East Bay Mud running water lines, PG&E has gas lines, telecommunication lines. So all of these different utilities and the snaking of them inside roadways and intersections, any kind of green infrastructure would need to allow for those crossings to exist, or we try not to require any kind of relocation of utilities in order to fit in a green infrastructure. In addition to that, it's really helpful to have an existing storm drain infrastructure in the vicinity. A lot of these green infrastructure projects, good design practice involves including some kind of overflow system so that if they do get plugged, as anything does over time, the water still has a place to go and it doesn't just contribute to flooding in the street. The other thing that I talked about was providing required clearance for emergency vehicles. As you know, a lot of these residential streets in Albany are quite narrow already, and taking away some of the street width in order to accommodate green infrastructure would make it really challenging for our longer fire response vehicles to make the turns required to respond to every.
So what's the minimum clearance for emergency vehicles? Like, up street width? Do you know that?
We usually look at it at a location-specific basis. There could be other obstructions in the way, but when it requires that we do have designers go and conduct turn analyses based off of the length of the vehicles that the fire department currently operates.
You guys answered my question about the pervious concrete, but thank you guys for the great presentation.
Sure, thanks.
I'm wondering if you guys have any quantitative results on the performance of the bioswales in Albany since they've been installed, if they've reduced flooding or anything like that.
That's a good question. I'm not aware of any monitoring that the city has conducted. I know the county-wide clean water program does have a monitoring program that selects different locations around the bay across specific selected sites in the county. I haven't looked at the results recently, so I don't know like percent reduction-wise, but it is part of our stormwater permit compliance program that we do have these selected sites where we have green infrastructure installed to monitor the performance for reductions of pollutants like mercury or PCPs, and that all gets aggregated and reported to the water board in these publicly available reports.
I think there's also the question of, David mentioned it as well. I don't know that we measure flood reduction in these swales, mostly pollutants and other things like that, and report to the water board as well. But I think there's also a question of the carrying capacity of these structures, specifically regarding pollutants. I'm not sure if you guys have any data, but seeing when, right, because all the pollutants, microplastics, et cetera, get stored in the system. That's one benefit of having a diverse ecosystem, as well as to have more species, more mycorrhizal fungi networks to eventually break that down. I actually received a question about that, like what do you do when it reaches carrying capacity? We have yet to hit that, and I'm actively looking into additional research on like the timeline of that. Our site was built in 2018, so that's what, 7-8 years old now, going on, et cetera. And you have some sites that are 12 plus years old. So it would be, and we're actively taking soil samples as well to kind of assess that. But they can certainly, it's a good investment. It's a good piece of infrastructure, green infrastructure, that can last a long time when maintained. We have not had any issues with ours as well, specifically issues with, the pollutants like coming back or not being able to capture any, to our knowledge so far.
That was one of my questions. Thank you for anticipating and asking that question. That would be cool to see what research comes out about that. I mean, it is like a pretty new old practice, so you might not just have the research yet. A question for Ethan. The way you showed that example of the way traditional landscaping practices, like mow and blow, don't work great with some native plants. That has definitely happened on the Ohlone Greenway. I recently learned that huge swaths of the Ohlone Greenway that are now grass were not, that there's a lot of sections of native plantings that, due to the maintenance practices, reverted to their lawn-like state. I'm wondering, did you, in redeveloping that site, do you now have a different idea on planting density?
Yeah, and that's a great question, planting density. My background is in like wildland restoration through California state parks, and so I love the kind of the messy habitat-esque approach, where it's like more of a patchwork instead of like the English-style garden where it's like one plant there, one plant there. But there's certainly space in our urban habitats for both those ideas, specifically for habitat as well. Ground nesting bees love exposed soil, for example. But also in a city, you can't have, like, if you're in this 6-foot wide median, but either in the middle of the street, you can't have towering shrubs. You have to be able to control it so folks can have safety and right-of-way access as well. So there's certainly a fine line to walk there, depending, like, site dependent. And so planting density, I think, also would be site dependent, and the right plant in the right place is always the key there. And I totally understand, like, areas where, right, one city staff member may be responsible for acres and acres of maintenance, and so the easiest thing, or when the weeds get too tall, like our wild oat grass, non-native invasive species, gets like chest high, you might not be able to see the native plant there. So I think that's something we're discussing, is training city staff on identification and best maintenance practices as well.
Is that part, you'll be doing that with the City of Albany potentially?
Yes, that's in talks.
Cool. So I recently learned we have something called a stormwater plan. Is the green infrastructure plan in the stormwater plan?
So the green infrastructure plan from 2019 is a separate plan, but we do also have a stormwater plan. It is the watershed management plan. That is an effort that we're currently working on. I did talk a bit about that in my last visit to Climate Action Committee, talking about how we are looking at how we manage our storm drain infrastructure on a citywide level, looking at areas where we have potential deficiencies or room for improvement, trying to figure out how we're going to address those challenges and the costs associated with implementing those improvement projects that are needed. So that is something that we're still currently actively working on, and we are working towards wrapping that project up with a final plan going to council later this year.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, let's turn it over to public comment.
Nick Peterson, your time starts now.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nick Peterson with Albany Climate Action Coalition. David and Ethan, excellent presentation. Thank you so much for your efforts. This is really exciting, and kudos for starting green infrastructure before it was regionally required. I think that shows a lot of innovation. I've seen these projects underway and completed, and they have really made a very positive impact on the areas where they've been located. First, I want to really encourage you to follow up on your, and I'm glad it's actually scheduled, your local volunteer work. The Albany Climate Action Coalition actually developed a tree team that we worked a little bit, or might have annoyed the city arborist, in that we put out flyers to people to make sure they'd request trees in front of their homes. And we always thought that group could also be helpful in planting trees and maintaining trees. And so we're eager to have volunteers assist you in this kind of effort. I think if Albany put together maybe I know there's a blue glove team that is not a city thing, but they meet regularly and clean up the greenway and the business district. Maybe a green glove team could be put together that would regularly maintain these areas to relieve the city from having to incorporate that into their budget. I think a lot of people would love to find out more about what kind of plants make them more native, and sort of have ownership and input on how those are done. It'd be a great city opportunity to help citizens take care of their environment. The other thing I wanted to do, I think committee member Bierce mentioned this. One of the members of our group has a proposal. He calls it WISE. I think it's I had it up here. Anyway, it's a way to get street trees where a lot of the Albany streets, some of them like Kane's, don't even have a planting strip. And trying to get street trees in, it's like there's nowhere to put them. But you do have sections of the street where no one can park, and you could donate that by making it an open planter, which wouldn't narrow the street because no cars would be moved. I mean, it just, if you have too small a space to park a car, you'd open it up and make a mini bioswale, plant a tree in it. And I'm wondering if that's something that could be incorporated into your green infrastructure plan. If so, we can give you information on that. It would really be something interesting to do. Thank you very much.
Lucinda Young, your time starts now.
Thank you. Really great presentations from both of you. I learned a lot. And I've also had the pleasure of participating in several of the cleanups organized by the group at both Albany Bulb and at the I believe it was Memorial Park that Watershed Project did also some years ago. Really excellent. I mean, besides the community benefit from the cleanup, I mean, the education that's provided to the community was just so valuable. So I do hope that the city contracts with Watershed Project and does future work. I think the organization is excellent and really has a lot to offer our city. I had a couple of comments. I think some type of sign, educational sign, would be extremely beneficial at these gardens. I mean, I have, and I think I notice my surroundings probably more than most people, but I have walked or bicycled by these gardens that you mentioned tonight and really haven't paid much attention to them. I learned a lot tonight. And I think and I know educational signs do cost money. There's a financial impact that has to be thought about. But I think it's really a great opportunity to raise awareness in our community about the importance of these gardens. So I'd really like to see that some more. And I'd also would really support a community work effort. I think it would be great to reduce the city's maintenance costs as well as to build community engagement between the city and the public. So I'd really like to see that. And there had been an effort a few years ago. I'm part of Albany Climate Action Coalition. We had reached out, a couple of the members of the coalition had reached out to the city arborist about forming some type of tree care team to help with planting and or maintenance of street trees. And I know City of Richmond had either still has or in the past had such. And at that time, the arborist was not interested. So I'm really glad to hear that a community engagement is being considered now. I'd also love to see something like Adopt a Spot incorporated here in Albany. I know Oakland also has a Adopt a Drain where you volunteer to keep a drain cleaned. Anyway, thanks, and really great. Appreciate all the hard work here.
No further public comment.
All right, we'll move to discussion on this item.
So I wanted to share some updates as well. David and I actually met earlier this week to talk about this in advance of today's meeting. As a member of ACAC, I have been coordinating with a couple different groups, including Ava Community Energy, which is sponsoring a $2,500 grant towards essentially bioswale work. And long story short, we are working together on planning the fall event. We're hoping to get Rotary to include some volunteers and/or funding for that. So date is still TBD, but there is some funding for potentially plants and/or a sign or other things, TBD again. But that's why I was curious about signs and costs and stuff like that, because there is some money for that. And I personally have background in volunteer management, so in 2009, I ran a 500-person volunteer day in college for dozens of organizations to do a day-long event. So it's a lot easier now with the software that we have. But I digress. So I just want to say that for anybody who in the community who wants to be part of a volunteer event this fall, please feel free to contact me directly, and I will get you busy. Thank you.
Also on the signage note, there's actually a really cool sign with the one that Watershed Project did outside of AMS. So you can check that out as an example of how other signs could be. It's very informative. It's cartoon style. Michelle, I'm going to talk about compost. So we're required as a city to purchase and use compost by state law, and so this seems like one of many great places to use compost, either as part of the soil in planting or mulching with the compost, because it can improve both water infiltration into the soil, as well as the soil moisture holding capacity. What are your thoughts, both of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'll defer to Ethan's expertise. He has a little bit more experience of the material that actually goes in the ground. But I think whatever design we end up going with, we have the Watershed Project working on that design for what the final planting plan is going to be, including what types of soil mixtures would work best for that specific location, type of mulch or material we're going to put on top, and the type of plants too. So I don't know if you want to weigh in right now about the specific materials or.
Yeah, that's something we ran into at a couple sites. Again, I mean, this sounds like I'm shirking an answer, but everything's site dependent. But certain things, depending on the time it was built, and then the updated statures by the organizations and the state boards that govern stormwater infrastructure, oftentimes, and this is not a blanket example, but like oftentimes the soil medium itself, or not soil, but the medium itself that goes into the bioswale is a large part sand, so it has a problem retaining water. And so that can also cause plant attrition as well, especially without the summer irrigation. So compost is certainly a big help there. It helps with infiltration, but also helps moisture retention as well. So certainly important if the location has heavy clay soil as well, because it can help break that up and help additionally help the water percolate into the ground as well. And just a note as well about educational signage. I can certainly get some quotes there. I do want to mention, recently we've been moving away from just purely educational signage to also incorporating local artists into our sign design. We have a series of signs and community science and art, combining it all together for water level monitoring on Wildcat Creek. You guys may see it at the Tilden Regional Parks Botanic Garden, the nature area there, where folks actually, in those photos I took from the flooding, certain flooding photos were of that, but also incorporating art from local artists. So that's another cool way to engage either students or the Rotary Club or some other artist-minded folks who may not be interested in volunteering to get their hands dirty. Certainly can engage the community there and bring the nice sign together as well. So happy to provide examples of those as well.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question? What do you with the city, or do you feel like there's any impediments to getting this done, to expanding the green infrastructure? Or is it really just a matter of like you're doing as much as, with the frequency anything gets done?
I would say on top of the challenges that I elaborated on with committee member Bierce, funding is a really major challenge. The costs to put in green infrastructure are not related just to the construction costs, but also design to make sure that we're putting something appropriate in for the space that we're located once we even find a space. And on top of that, the ongoing operations and maintenance. The more green infrastructure we put in, which is a great thing, the more operation and maintenance costs we incur as a city. So that is something else to consider. And right now, stormwater as a general service is underfunded, not just within Albany, but across the state. That's the message that we're seeing. That's the message that we're hearing from our other local municipalities. So that is something that we are trying to get the word out on. Generally, what your experience is during the wet season, you have flooding, inundation, and it gets a lot of attention. And then come the dry season, the problems go away, and they're only going to come back at a later date. So that is a challenge, just to try to figure out how do we source the funds for this. Luckily, the nice thing about green infrastructure is because of the myriad benefits that we talked about tonight, it is a really great candidate for grant funding. And so we try to pursue any kind of grant funding where those opportunities come up and we hear about them, and there is overlap between what the grant is looking for and a project that we have in place. But even still, even with securing grant funding, typically you do want to have a project already in place, or at least underway, and there are costs associated with kickstarting that project off the ground. So we're trying to balance those challenges of getting projects underway, getting the costs of those accounted for, and then on top of that, trying to figure out how we come in on the back end and get these projects implemented.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, I think we'll end there. Thank you so much. That's it. Yeah. Thank you so much, David and Ethan, for that great presentation. And with that, we will take a 5-minute break and come back at 8:31. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
and share where we're at, where we've been, where we can go from here. So that's what we'll be talking about tonight. So to start off with the timeline, all the way back in January 2021, the city passed Resolution 2020-127. Believe it or not, this was actually the first thing I worked on when I started at Albany, so kind of fun and special. But this is a green building resolution. We did all of these by resolution rather than ordinance because our municipal code allowed that and it made things easier. And there was kind of a variety of requirements laid out that covered a few different areas, covered water efficiency, low carbon concrete, a few different energy efficiency things, and also incentivized all electric construction for low-rise buildings. And so it covered various building types. It covered new buildings as well as existing building retrofits, but different measures applied to different types of things. And that sort of core stayed the same throughout the other two resolutions here. But in December of 2021, we updated it, passed Resolution 2021-118, and that added incentives for all electric construction for mid and high-rise buildings as well. And these incentives, they were basically structured using what's called a compliance margin. I'll talk a little bit more later, but essentially it means that if you wanted to use gas in a new construction, you had to increase the overall efficiency of the building by a certain amount, and that just increases the price and kind of complexity of the build, so it makes it a little bit easier to go with all electric instead. And then in December of 2022, we passed Resolution 2022-135. This updated it to align with the 2023 codes that took effect in January of 2023. And then it also included a requirement for new construction and major remodels to be all electric. So definitely the furthest we went in terms of that type of requirement. Okay. Now, in 2019, there was a lawsuit that the California Restaurant Association filed against Berkeley over their natural gas ban. This is an ordinance that Berkeley passed that was similar, but a little bit different to our rules. It basically made it illegal to install natural gas piping in new buildings. And that lawsuit went through the courts for several years. Finally, in 2023, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals struck down Berkeley's ordinance and said that it was preempted by a federal rule called EPCA, saying basically you're not allowed to do this as a city. And then in January of 2024, they declined to hear Berkeley's appeal. And so at that point, we basically considered the case closed and stopped enforcing our all-electric section of that most recent resolution, 2022-135.
Question, does SF have a similar ordinance, and do they still enforce it? Do you know?
Yeah, so San Francisco, they have a more recent ordinance requiring all-electric construction. I'll get into this into a little bit more detail later. But it's a little bit different than Berkeley's, and yeah, more recent. But yeah, basically, looking at the language of the ruling, it was determined that our resolution was probably also in violation of EPCA. So we stopped enforcing that back in early 2024. We did, however, continue enforcing the other aspects of that resolution. The other important piece of information about all this is how the code cycle works in California. So there are statewide building codes that are updated every 3 years. And when the new update happens, all of the prior codes and REACH codes expire. So all of the local amendments that we do, all of our special rules, those all expire when the new codes come into effect. So January 1st of this year, when the 2025 codes went into effect, our resolution 2022-135 expired. It's no longer enforceable. So that's why not only is the all-electric requirement not being forced, but also all of those other, water efficiency pieces and whatnot. Another important thing about the building codes is that there have been some pretty big advances in that state building code, especially around electrification. Now, for new single-family homes, heat pump HVAC and heat pump water heaters are the prescriptive requirement. So it is possible to install gas, but you kind of have to jump through a lot of hoops, and you still have to be electric ready. You still have to have all the wiring in place to have electric appliances in later. So, it's possible, but they've made it much more difficult. It's a lot simpler to just go all electric now for a new build. And there's a variety of other new requirements that cover a lot of ground that our old resolution was working on, trying to push ahead of the old building code, and now it's sort of caught up to where we were in a lot of ways. So that's all really great news. And then a bit of a twist with the state building codes. AB 103. This is a law that was passed last summer, really mainly in response to the huge wildfires in LA and the number of homes that were burned down and the sort of need to rebuild quickly, along with a few other things. But really what it does is it bans cities from adopting REACH codes that change the state building code.
And what is BSC?
Oh, yes, thank you. That is the Building Standards Commission. So all REACH codes have to be approved by the Building Standards Commission to check basically that they are legal, because there's limits on what local governments can do. So yeah, this bans cities from adopting new REACH codes. There are some exceptions to that. I'd say the most relevant one to us is that if it's necessary to if you need a REACH code to align with a general plan that permits mixed fuel residential construction and also incentivizes all electric construction. So it's sort of a lengthy exception. It's a little bit unclear exactly what it means. We do have a general plan that talks about energy efficiency. Doesn't really get into electrification because it's a little old now. And so it's not totally clear how the Building Standards Commission would interpret all of this if we try to pass a REACH code sort of similar to the one that we had before. Anecdotally, from other cities that are trying to pass REACH codes, what I've heard is that nobody really seems to know, and maybe the BSC is still kind of figuring it out too. There's definitely a wait in terms of actually getting anything approved and through the door. So this is all to say there's a really big question mark here of whether we even legally can pass a REACH code, and if we can, what exactly that would be allowed to include, and kind of how many loops and retries we might have to go through. Really not certain right now. Now, putting that aside, just thinking about what's even possible outside of, the BSC approval process. One of the other big limits to REACH codes is that anything that's energy related has to be cost effective. That's, what does that mean, cost effective? Well, it means that the California Energy Commission has essentially scientists that do these really big analyses and all these cost and energy analyses of various types, and they shoot out numbers that say, okay, you can require X, Y, and Z thing, or you can require a compliance margin of 4.5 if you're in this climate. There's all these kind of technical pieces of it. But there's essentially limits placed on how much we can require. We can't require that, all new construction be electric, for example, but we could do a similar thing where we say, if you want to have gas in your new building, then you have to, be 6% more efficient than an all-electric building. And we'd have to get exactly what those numbers are for each building type and kind of work that out, but it would be that type of a requirement. So again, it would incentivize electrification. It would make it a little bit easier. It would make the cost of putting gas in a new building more expensive. Exactly what the scale of that difference would be is still TBD. You'd have to really do the analysis there. But that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. And then, there's also potentially some other types of green building measures, things again related to water efficiency or other little pieces like that. Like I said, a lot of that stuff, the state code has now gone up to where we were before, so it might be something new, it might be something that's no longer relevant, but there might be a few bits and bobs. Now, the scale of impact of all this is also a really important thing to think about. How much of an impact would it make for us to try to pass a REACH code? As I mentioned, the state building codes being stronger is great. It also means that our impact from a REACH code is smaller, right? Because there's less of a gap there. And then in terms of just the numbers, we do not get a lot of new buildings here in Albany, as I'm sure you guys are aware. It's not even really space for that. Really, the vast majority of our new buildings are ADUs. Going in people's yards or attached to their home, maybe converting a garage, that sort of thing. That counts as a new building, if it's detached at least. We had 13 of those last year. I think 2 of them were single-family homes and 11 were ADUs, something like that. Almost entirely electric. I was actually
13, that's 2 single-family homes and 11 are ADUs?
I believe so, something close to that, yeah. And I think among that whole pool, there was 1 gas water heater and no gas furnaces, right? So, the numbers are very good. Again, not a huge gap to fill. If we're looking at major remodels, our most recent resolution did have an all-electric requirement for major remodels. In terms of the cost effectiveness that we'd have to do to incentivize it, it's not totally clear how much we could require, but assuming that we could do something there, maybe 10 to 15 of those a year, something like that, depending on how you define it. Again, I was looking back at our bigger projects, mostly electric. Good chunk of people weren't replacing appliances in those, or maybe only replacing, the water heater, but not the HVAC or something. But again, a very small number of gas installations going in those projects. So all this is to say, if we went through the whole process and got it approved by the Building Standards Commission, we're really only looking at a few more electric appliances getting installed in the city in total. And maybe like some very slightly more water efficient toilets, if we can manage that. It's not a huge scale of impact, and it's probably quite a bit of work to go through that process with the BSC and see what we're even allowed to do. And that's really the reason that we haven't made a big push to implement new REACH codes for this new code cycle. Just looking at the impact of our rebate program is already more than this. So my sense from working on this for a long time is that even though it was making more of an impact when we first put these resolutions in place, in the new state of affairs with AB 103, with the new building codes, with the ruling from the Ninth Circuit, it's probably not a huge impact if we pass a REACH code now. And I think probably not the most effective use of our staff time. That's my opinion, but happy to answer questions. talk through this more, talk through what the different possibilities might be. But yeah.
Question. Great presentation, super informative. Think good to know about the buildings, reach codes, or the state stuff. It's interesting. What are your thoughts on a point of sale mandate? Is that no on the Brown Act in terms of we can talk about that? This is building related, so hopefully it's like kosher. But
yeah, I mean, it's tangential, so maybe we shouldn't get into it too much. It really, that's not something that would fall within a building code requirement. Because, building code, it's really only triggered by work on the house, not by sale itself. So yeah, it would be a totally different mechanism. I think there's a lot of challenges that come up with that too. But yeah, it's really a separate mechanism.
I don't know if you have this information, but I'm just curious if your sense is that the large number of electrical, with especially the new installations or even the remodels, was that owner-initiated electrification or desire for electric, or was it contractor, or what's your sense of the contractor's space head approach these days? Is it electric's good and we want to go that way?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the contractors that do a lot of work in Albany, I really only know much about the HVAC and water heating contractors, the ones that do a lot of, just appliance switches. And most of them are very much on board with heat pumps now. They really understand how they work and they're pitching them to clients. The kind of larger scale remodel contractors, I'm not so sure about. I think generally they're subcontracting out to those same people, I would guess. So it might be part of that. I also think, the building code changes is a piece of it too. I mentioned the new code being really strong on electrification. But even the most recent code cycle was a lot stronger than the one before it. And so, for those ADUs and the couple of new single families, just the state code itself is putting in a lot of incentives to go electric. So that's certainly a piece of it as well.
Do you know, you pointed out that there are as many or more renos than there are new builds in Albany. Do you know to what extent this new state building code addresses renovations needing to be electric ready?
That's a great question. I actually don't know off the top of my head what's in there. Generally speaking, the state code is a lot looser with renovations, in large part because existing buildings can be so variable. But I don't actually know off the top of my head what the electric ready requirements are. There may be something around water heating, but I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, with that, let's go to public comment. We are a little short on time. Maybe let's put the 2-minute limit.
Nick Peterson, your time starts now.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, wow, 2 minutes. Yeah, it sounds like staff would like this all to just kind of go away. I sort of follow the logic, but one thing I was never sure about, would anyone analyze the risk? I mean, basically we had this in place for 3 years. Nobody questioned it at all. We stopped enforcing it, but the whole lawsuit was based on restaurants, and several other municipalities held tight to their requirements and didn't incur any lawsuits. So, they kind of roll over and kiss it off. And it bothers me a little, especially with the urgency of what we're trying to do and impress on people. The other thing is, codes are good for 3 years. So we're not just talking about, we're talking about the next 3 years of new construction and remodeling construction in Albany. And there's some potentially very large new apartment buildings coming online. One already has a building permit, and I think they're already pretty committed to doing things electric. But, just looking at the ADUs alone isn't just the full story, and we could have a couple tall apartment buildings going in. If they're gas, that's really unfortunate. So I would think putting in our REACH code wouldn't be hard. We did it before. We would just modify what we put before to eliminate anything that's already covered by the new code and submit it. And then if the state building commission or whatever it is contests it, we can just say, well, at least we tried. I don't think it's going to involve as much staff time as before. The other thing I'm worried about was we also had increases in multifamily for EV charge stations, which I wouldn't want to see go. The other thing is the EPCA, it's 40 years old. I don't understand why it dictates. Thanks.
Lucinda Young, your time starts now.
Yes. First, I want to ask for the full 3 minutes because I think there are only 2 people here speaking tonight, and this is a really important issue. I had the opportunity to talk extensively with Tyrone Jew, who's the San Francisco Environmental Director, back last April about how they're handling this. San Francisco, in response to the Ninth Circuit decision, amended their all-electric plan, and they have a specific carve-out, an exemption that addresses the Ninth Circuit decision. They have an exemption for any EPCA or EPCA covered appliances. They've had this in effect. They have not had any lawsuits. They have not had any questions asked. And San Francisco is really, he said he's happy to talk to our city. They want other cities to join their fight. This is not, we're little. Really, nothing that Albany does is going to make a huge impact in the big picture. But we want to support the movement. And we're only maybe talking about 15 remodels a year. And actually that seems a little low to me. But we're also modeling, and we want to support what other cities are doing. San Francisco is doing this. I also understand Santa Cruz or other cities. Instead, Albany, the response was just, stop enforcement. Well, other cities amended their codes to respond to the Ninth Circuit decision. So, and also, I know the new building codes, it's great. We've got the new building codes, but they don't address remodels. It's just new construction. What we really have a lot more of here in Albany is remodels.
Thank you, Lucinda.
Thank you, Lucinda. No further public comment.
We need to extend the meeting today.
Sure. I think we're almost to the end, but maybe, let's do a motion to extend to 9:10.
Second.
Member Bierce?
Yes.
Member Larson?
Yes.
Member Lieberman?
Yes.
Member Roche-Shears?
Yes.
Member Vihil McClanahan? Yes. Chair Hodges?
Yes. Okay, discussion.
Thanks for your presentation, Michelle. It was very informative. And I appreciate the feedback from the members of the public. I just know there are so many items that I'm hoping that we can get through as a committee. Maybe this is foreshadowing the next item on the agenda, but there were a lot of requests for future agenda items at the last meeting that we haven't gotten to and from prior meetings. And given what sounds like a relatively low amount of impact, I would say, of the proposal or the response from the public, I feel like this is maybe lower tier or maybe like high effort, low return compared to some of the other items that I'm interested in spending our committee time on.
Yeah, I think there were some good points made that, if there were, a major apartment building or a new development coming through, that could change the calculus, especially if they decide to go the gas route. But I think I am encouraged by the strengthened codes and would like to learn a little bit more about how they put electric first. But at least, from my side as well, I feel that, I kind of accept the recommendation that Michelle has made, and at least on my side, see it as a lower priority item for now.
Yeah, I concur. I want to, it's more of a future agenda item request, but a point of sale ordinance, I know it's politically perhaps unpopular, given current city council preferences, but that might be something we circle back to in a couple of years, in terms of, I think it'll be higher impact and lower effort.
Mostly concur with what everyone's saying. I guess I would like to understand a little better, what does state code say will happen when we get our hoped for new housing? Because it sounds like we know it steers people toward electric, but what does that really look like? I wish I understood that better, because that would help me understand whether we ought to be ready.
I'll add a little bit there. We have, I think, one or two large multifamily buildings that are sort of in the pipeline, have submitted plans. Those are all electric plans. As far as I know, they're currently sort of on pause for construction due to economic conditions. These things very much flow with the economy. The building code incentivizes all electric construction, does not require it. Any REACH code we have would basically, add a little bit to that incentive. I couldn't tell you right now like how much. And again, the economic conditions of the moment would probably have a pretty big effect on how impactful that is. But it does seem that generally all electric construction in multifamilies is becoming much, much, much more common, especially here in the Bay Area, and especially in Albany as well. So,
thank you.
Cool. All right. With that, I'll move on to item 5.2, the subcommittee update for zero emission transportation.
I think in the last meeting, we said we provided a summary of the email exchange that the three of us had and suggested that we push to the next meeting an agenda item to just officially close this out. So I don't know how much more we have to add from that, but that's kind of where we are, I think.
Cool. Okay. With that, is a motion what's needed then, or?
Yeah, we'll do questions and quick public comment, or if there's any discussion, since it is a full item, and then it would be a motion.
Okay, cool. Okay. Okay, I guess first, any questions? Okay, so then we go to public comment.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
And do you want to stick with the 2 minutes?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Lucinda Young, your time starts now.
Sorry, my hand was up from the last. What is, could you repeat what you're asking for comment about? My hand was up from last time.
It's for officially sunsetting the Zero Emission Transportation Subcommittee.
I have no comment.
Okay, Nick Peterson, your time starts now.
Yeah, thank you. So I hope this doesn't mean that that's a pretty broad category. And again, with having subcommittees that are focused a little more, I think there's aspects of zero emission transportation that really need to be addressed, like charging like incentivizing people more, like looking at, there's a bunch of stuff. Go look back at the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. There's a bunch of stuff that falls under that category. So please don't, brush your hands together thinking that zero emission transportation has been solved by Albany. It is not. I'd also like to see the city's zero emission transportation or electrification of fleet improve, and that each department must come forward with some sort of aspect of how they're going to address the cap and not just sit back there and do business as usual, which comes back to the staffing thing, which is we're going to talk about shortly. So I cannot see the clock at all, but those are my comments.
No further public comment.
Okay, comments from the committee? Yeah.
I think maybe we need to move this item to the full committee rather than from subcommittee. So you've got the EV charging work you've researched. Electric is coming to Albany at some point whenever they get the funding, it sounds like. But in terms of EV charging and stuff, might be an agenda item for the future rather than a subcommittee specific thing.
Well, I think where we got to, and just to add on to what our discussion was that the current standing subcommittee had kind of run its course, and we decided that it was going to be better to, we still have very high interest in zero emission transportation, and each one of us would, think about new initiatives we could bring forward and then create subcommittees based on that, new initiatives, but just to sunset the standing subcommittee that's been in existence for over a year.
I want to give Nick Peterson comfort that we are not declaring victory. I will restate for the 11th time in front of this committee that I think that Albany is an EV charging desert, and it's highly problematic. I'm hoping that we can create another committee on that topic, not now, but maybe after receiving a presentation on the status of the It's Electric contract or something like that.
All right, I'll put forward a motion to sunset the Zero Emission Transportation Subcommittee.
Seconded.
Member Bierce?
Yes.
Member Larson?
Yes.
Member Lieberman?
Yes.
Member Rose Shears? Yes. Member Vail McClanahan?
Yes.
Chair Hodges?
Yes. Okay, with that, we'll move on to subcommittee updates. Do we have anything from the staffing subcommittee?
No updates.
No updates. Okay, great. With that, we will move on to announcements.
Great. I'll be quick. The July 4th event in Memorial Park is happening this year, as always, and the Banana Slugs String Band is going to be there, and they're going to talk about waste. It's going to be awesome. Everyone should go. Also, quick announcement about It's Electric. I don't really have enough for a full presentation right now, but I will note that the city signed a license agreement with them. There's an item on the council agenda February 17th of this year if you want to look at all the details on that. But yeah, basically it's a license agreement that allows them to operate in the public right-of-way under certain conditions. They pay for installing charging infrastructure there and maintaining it and all those things. So it's a license agreement. It's not really a contract. So it's dependent on them finding sites and funding and all those kinds of things, which is in the works at the moment. So we don't have any impending installations right now. But, we're keeping in touch with them about it, and we're hopeful that we'll get installations soon. But yeah, as we get kind of more information on that process, I can bring more to the committee about it.
Great. Okay, with that, I guess we'll go to requests for future agenda items from the public.
Nick Peterson, your time starts now.
I actually had a comment on 6 in the staffing subcommittee. I just had clarification that subcommittee is not being sunsetted. It didn't sound like you sunsetted it. So that's one. And then on 7, future agenda items. There's a lot that can be done. I think the BASO building energy requirements? Is it, similar to what Berkeley's done? Is it something that needs to be pursued again, at least some kind of rating system that doesn't have mandatory upgrade requirements like Berkeley is now enforcing, but we need to start somewhere. Again, these are things that are going to roll out. You can't immediately just start making people, you can't wait till 2045 and say your home is now unplugged from gas, and too bad. So having some sort of standard coming into place means that you need to sort of track that, and you need to build a database, and you need to have some idea of who are complying, who aren't. At some point, it'll be that people aren't complying or polluting, and they'll have to pay accordingly or do something. So it's a process dealing with existing construction that needs to have a lot of time for people to sort of get into what it is. I think Berkeley's done a good job of sort of phasing this in and headed towards that, and we're not doing anything. So anyway, that's my suggestion for a future item. Thank you.
Lucinda Young, your time starts now.
I'd also second pursuing VISO. I brought that up at previous meetings as well, and starting with just a rating system. We need to reach the current inventory of homes. The committee decided tonight that they don't want to follow the lead of San Francisco and other cities by pursuing an all-electric, even though San Francisco has already laid the path for it, has already done the work, so it really wouldn't require a whole lot of additional staff work. But something needs to be done to reach the inventory of existing homes. I've got a home 4 houses down from me, 700 block of Pomona. They're doubling the square footage, putting in probably $600,000 to $800,000 of an improvement. They're putting in all new gas appliances. So there needs to be something to address that situation. Rebates are great, but it's not going to incentivize. It's not sufficient, and especially with all the tax credits and the state rebates gone. Albany's rebates are helpful, but they're not going to move the dial. And I think that's why in Michelle's last presentation, we saw a drop off, and it's the lapse of the federal credits and the state credits. Or the state rebates. So I think we need to focus, this committee needs to focus on how are we going to prevent more situations like this where we have major remodels and putting in all gas appliances. Thank you.
No further public comment.
Okay. I guess last we have future agenda items from the committee.
Yeah, just want to second what folks said about the base. So if you can't do a requirement, at least have a ratings for point of sale, and then eventually a requirement would be good. Portland has a rating system, for example, in Oregon.
On that same theme, Rebecca Milliken from City of Berkeley and her colleague have offered to come and present to us, and I would appreciate hearing from them in front of the whole committee. And I'd also still like a presentation from the City of Alameda on their work with its electric, to see what they've learned. If there is any role for our committee to help out with that initiative, I think that would be informative. If there isn't a role for this committee, then we can talk about other things. But thank you.
Yeah, just a third voice in favor of hearing from Berkeley about their experiences with BASO implementation. And I still would hope that we can get another agenda item about the staffing subcommittee proposal, because I think the time to work on planning for that is before the opportunity arises to actually hire someone, and that time is now.
All right. Well, we went 1 minute unauthorized over. I hope that's okay. And with that, we'll close out the meeting. Thank you.